Thank you for tuning in to another Slay the Brawl Deck Tech. My name is Wes with the Slay the Brother team, and today we're going to be going over... Is it Sire? Is it Sir? I'm thinking Sire Vondam. It sounds fancier. Sire. Either ways, our Sire here is a 2/2 Orzhov Human Knight with 1 white and 1 black in their mana costs. They have Vigilance and Menace, which is actually pretty good. We can get a lot of damage through with them. Their ability reads, whenever another creature you control dies or is put into exile, put a 1/1 counter on Sire Vondam. You gain 1 life. When Sire Vondam dies or is put into exile, while its power is 4 or greater, destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. So there's a lot of ways to go about building this guy. The first thing a lot of people would think is, we're going to do Aristocrats. We're going to do a bounce deck, which those are very fun with them. They are. I went more towards the solid mid-range style, though. A lot of people, when they're building standard Brawl decks, if they're not familiar with the format, they'll try to do some fun, cheeky shit, some combo stuff, like a lot of the deck list I make will be based around. And the problem is, those are hard to make, sometimes hard to run in the meta, because it's such a removal-heavy meta. A lot of advice I've seen people give to beginners, and I've given to beginners myself, is make a mid-range deck. Your commander does not need to be the focal point of this deck. You want to have removal and ways to stop your opponent from going off. Then you can sneak your stuff in. The best way I heard it put was yesterday someone said, consider your commander as a backup option. And that's kind of where this deck is. We want the commander on field as early as possible because they do have an amazing ability, but we don't need to play them. We aren't feeling the push to play them. So this isn't something like a Vivi or a Tifa deck. So without further ado, we're going to go into the deck. There are some synergies with their ability, but like I said, we're not running an Aristocrat deck. We're not running a bounce deck. So this is a pretty simple game plan. First, we're going to get into the creatures, how some of them synergize with Sire Vondam, and then go into the ability, the removal, and other cards we have that kind of help close the game out. So as far as the creatures that synergize with our commander, first we have Forsaken Miner. They're 2/2 for 1 mana, they can't block, but whenever we commit a crime, we can pay 1 swamp. And if we do, we can return this card from our graveyard to the battlefield. So that's just nice to have this constant basher where we actually want them to die, especially if we have our commander in play. Same thing with Timeline Caller. This is a great card from Edges of Eternities. You can cast it for 2 black mana, and it's a 2/2 with haste. You may cast this creature card from your graveyard by using its warp ability. Its warp is 1 black and 2 life. So you can just keep getting this guy into play, keep getting them out. You can get multiple triggers off a Timeline Caller, just like you can off of Forsaken Miner over the course of a long game. Bulwark Ox is nice because they offer protection. They're a 2 mana, 2/2 white mount. And whenever this creature attacks while saddled, we can put a 1/1 counter on any target creature. So we saddle them, we put a 1/1 counter on Sir Vondam, maybe get another one on them. Now they're a 4/4 without a creature dying. That's really fun. And, the great thing about this guy too, Bulwark Ox, we can sacrifice them, and anyone with counters on them gets indestructible and hexproof until end of turn. This is someone I like to throw in my commander decks. I use them in Historic Brawl and when I play with white. They're a solid card. Voice of Victory, they've got Mobilize too. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. That's an awesome ability, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, they're just in here for the Mobilize. That way we can get the triggers when they attack. If this person attacks when a Sire Vondam is on play, that automatically makes them a 4/4 at the beginning of your end step. Avenger of the Fallen, who also has Mobilize. They're a 2/4 with Death Touch for 3 mana, a black creature. And Mobilize X, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Even though we aren't staffed with creatures, this can still get pretty crazy. But even having just 2 or 3 creatures in your graveyard is really fun with your commander in play because it just starts beefing them up so quick. I have Elegy of Acolyte. I'm calling this the new Shieldred. If you're playing mono black, it's really worth just trying this guy, giving this guy a shot as your 4-drop. They're a great stopgap for aggro decks, but outside of standard for commander, they are very, very fun. Or for Brawl, they're very, very fun. They're a 4 mana 4/4 with lifelink. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, we can draw a card and lose 1 life, which is pretty fun. We're playing black. We like drawing cards and losing life. There's a few things in here that give us 1 life. So, I've bounced back quite a lot with this deck. And then they have a Void ability. At the beginning of our end step, if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or if a spell was warped, we create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. Which, nothing's wrong with getting more creatures into play. And speaking of warp, we do have another warp creature in here, Anti-Casual Vestige. They're the 6-mana Eldrazi from Edges of Eternities, and whenever they leave the battlefield, we get a draw card and put a permanent with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands we control from our hand onto the battlefield tapped. So, because we have some mana stones in here, only the 2, you're looking at least 3 though. And that's pretty good because that's almost all of our creatures. That's a lot of our stuff. And if you have 4 lands, that's almost everything. So I've got Sanguine Evangelist and Preacher of the Schism in here. They're both just good ways to give us creature tokens. Preacher of the Schism allows us to draw cards. They're solid, especially in this deck. Then I have Unstoppable Slasher, very overpowered creature, but mainly, when they die, they come back into play, so that will help trigger her multiple times. Then I also have Halia, Guided by Light. This is our Soul Sister, our only one in this deck, but they're pretty awesome because they can give us card advantage. If we've gained 3 or more life at the end of a turn, it doesn't have to be just from their ability. We can draw a card, so that's cool because if we have her and our commander in play, it's actually not that hard to get 3 life. Just by swinging, they're going to want to block someone. We kind of do have a few good creatures to interact with our opponents. I have Lightfall Inquisitor and Deep Cavern Bat to kind of help with some hand hate there. I have Sunblessed Healer. They're a 2-mana 3/1 with lifelink, but if we pay the 2-mana kicker, we can get a creature card with mana value 2 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. I don't have a lot of recursion in this deck, but just having one that attaches to a creature was very nice. Midnight Reaper is a great card because whenever a non-token creature we control dies, this creature deals 1 damage to us and we draw a card. Which, between Midnight Reaper and our commander, Sire Vondam, Sunstar, Expemplar, if we get hit by a board wipe when they're in the field and maybe just one other creature, we get a lot to go off there. We get to gain life from our commander's ability, then we get to draw cards and lose life from Midnight Reaper's ability. And then, if our commander is up to 4, we can take out one of their non-land permanents. So this deck is really great at punishing board wipes. That is the thing I love the most about it. That should have been my starting pitch, I'm not going to lie. But that's a quick overview of the creatures. The only creature I didn't go over was a Cecil Dark Knight. They're a 1-mana 2/3 with Death Touch. I don't care about their darkness ability. It's just a good early game basher, early game blocker. You need a lot of this early game stuff in order to get by in Brawl. So first I want to go over the few things in this deck that can actually bounce our commander or bounce other creatures, which is actually very, very helpful. First we have Getaway Glamour. It's a white spree card, 1 mana on its own. The first spree costs 1 generic mana. Exile target non-token creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So you can't use that first node 4 token removal, but we can use it to protect our commander or even trigger their ability. The next one is Parting Gust. This works as great removal on its own if we just gift a tapped fish, but we can use it to, once again, protect our commander from something like a board wipe or removal, and maybe get a way to trigger their ability. When those counters are removed, now we get to destroy a non-land permanent. Starfall Invocation is great. If we gift a card, which we will want to gift a card if our commander is in play. And usually you want to gift a card with this because it keeps you a creature in play. I've had it happen once where I gifted a card and then they drew with a counter spell they needed to get rid of Starfall Invocation, but that doesn't happen often. So this is a 5-mana board wipe, destroy all creatures. If the gift was promised, return a creature card, put it into the graveyard this way to the battlefield under your control. It's our graveyard. But this is great because it lets us activate their ability. If we use this and we have creatures on our side and we target Sire Vondam as the creature to pull out of our graveyard, what's going to end up happening is all our creatures die. So they get the counters, then they die, then they destroy a non-land permanent. Then we get them back in play. And then the opponent has to either deal with them or put up with the shenanigans we're pulling next turn. But then outside of that, this is we got the solid mid-range strategy going on, folks. I mentioned Getaway Glamour. It can also be you can pay 3 mana to destroy target creature if no other creature has greater power. We don't have a lot of big bashers. Sire Vondam, they can get pretty big, so sometimes you can't use that on them. But, worst case scenario, you want to destroy something specific, bounce them with Getaway Glamour. Now those tokens are gone. Even though they're no longer this big badass basher, we got rid of a threat. Unwanted Remake, Tragic Trajectory, they're really great spells to have. Easy, cheap removal. Tragic Trajectory works great because of the warp ability, because of Void, and if Void triggers, instead of being -2/-2 at sorcerer speed, it's -10/-10, which is really, really amazing. I've got Exorcism, Get Lost, Feed the Swarm. These will all allow us to destroy creatures or enchantments if we need to. Very useful, especially in our colors. Black does not have a lot to destroy enchantments. I know white does, but you want to, when you're playing standard Brawl, you want a lot of your removal to do more than one thing if you can. But you know, we've got Bitter Triumph, we've got Nowhere to Run, Shoot the Sheriff. So those are all good cards for solid 2-mana removal cards. Then after that, we have a few board wipes. I have Split Up, Starfall Invocation, which I've already gone over, and Day of Judgment. We don't need a lot of board wipes, but it is nice to have them. Speaking about things that are nice to have, I have Virtue of Loyalty and Virtue of Persistence in this deck. Persistence also doubles as a removal spell, and Virtue of Loyalty will allow us to get a 2/2 token. And one other thing I should note about Virtue of Persistence is it gives us 2 life, which if we have Halia Guided by Light in play, then that's just going to help us draw a card that much quicker. But these are great cards because their adventures are very useful. I even don't see the 2/2 Night token coming half the time. When someone's got 2 mana untapped, I'm assuming they're going to use removal. So yeah, you know, these are both great spells to have, and in a later game, they have huge payoff. Virtue of Loyalty for just 5 mana at the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 counter on each creature and untap those creatures. So that just naturally synergizes with Sire Vondam. Even though they have the Vigilance, they don't need untapped. We have a lot of creatures that could use the help getting untapped. And enough Death Touch in here, it feels nice. And then, you know, Virtue of Persistence for 7 mana at the beginning of our upkeep, put target creature card from any graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. If the game goes really, really, really long, we're both top decking or maybe struggling to get the card advantage we need, this will turn the tables. Speaking about turning the tables, we have Sothera the Super Void. This is a cool 4 mana black legendary enchantment from Edges of Eternities. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent chooses a creature they control and exiles it. That's pretty fun. Now the last part of this ability is where it's at. At the beginning of your end step, if a player controls no creatures, sacrifice this artifact. Then put a creature card exiled with it onto the battlefield under your control with 2 additional 1/1 counters on it. So this definitely would synergize better if we were running the Aristocrat deck. Obviously, we could get multiple triggers in one turn and maybe get Sothera the Super Void to actually get sacrificed and yield us a creature at the end of the turn entered play. But with all this removal we have, sometimes it's actually not that hard to force their hand, have them block a creature, kill one of our creatures, and then they have to sacrifice their crap. Or you can even use your own removal to trigger this. And I should mention Elspeth Stormslayer. She's just a very powerful card. If 1 or more tokens would be created under our control, we can create twice that many instead. So it's not massively synergetic with our deck. We have a few token creators, but not a lot. You know, her +1 will create a token, so now we get 2 tokens out of her. Her 0 puts a 1/1 counter on each creature we control. Those creatures gain flying until end of turn. This is a great way to make our field presence stronger, maybe swing for the win, or get that 4th counter on our commander. And then their -3 allows us to destroy target creature an opponent controls with mana value 3 or greater. So just, you know, anything that has removal slapped on it, in this kind of deck, why not? Because that's the game plan. We've got a lot of removal, we've got some creatures with Death Touch, we've got a few cards for taking out their hand, and some board wipes. I mean, it is just a solid Orzhov mid-range deck that still gets a lot of those advantages you can get from a Aristocrat deck without having to focus on the Aristocrat playstyle. So I hope this was a fun and insightful deck tech for you. I hope you came away with a few tricks for your own deck, or maybe you just think this brew is fun and you want to try it out. If you have some friends that are new to Standard Brawl, definitely show them this list. I think it's very easy to understand, and it has a lot of lines for you to learn and play on for some more complex combos, but it doesn't need you to use complex combos to win the game. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more awesome content. Stay tuned next week because I promise I'm going to be using this guy in a landfall deck. And I hope you go out there and slay the Brawl.
Slay the Brother makes another deck that slaps. Killchop's brother Soviet Green makes the mid-range look so mean. Coming at you with another damage horror grind down experimental meme deck from the Slay the Brother team.